Hello and welcome to a special edition of Community Spotlight. We are broadcasting from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, and I am your host, Amanda Pierce. Today I am joined by Carrie Herron, the CFO of CAB Incorporated, who is a great friend of Business RadioX and a returning powerhouse woman, alongside Nancy Freehoff, President and CEO of Partnership Against Domestic Violence. And PADV is the reason that we are here today. Nancy and Carrie, please tell our listeners a little bit about the organization and all the great work you're doing within our community. And we'll go ahead and start with Nancy.
Absolutely. And Amanda, thank you so much for having us on today. We always say that domestic violence hates darkness or it loves darkness and it hates light. And so when people like you have us on your show, it's an opportunity to bring light to this topic. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. So Partnership Against Domestic Violence was the first domestic violence agency in Georgia, the fifth in the nation. We have very comprehensive services. We have shelters in Fulton and Gwinnett County, 24-hour crisis line, legal advocacy. Families are in our supportive housing program as the next step after being in the shelter. We do a lot of work in dating violence to help youth understand what a healthy relationship looks like, and also to help adults understand and parents the realities that their children are facing. We do a lot of community education and awareness. Our mission is to end the crime of intimate partner violence and empower survivors. So really everything we do is to help us accomplish and move towards that mission.
It sounds obvious that you're passionate about the organization and what you do. May I ask a bold question?
Of course.
Where did the enthusiasm come from? Maybe did you experience something personally, or did someone close to you have one of those experiences that kind of led to the initiation of this organization?
Mm-hmm. So I have been so fortunate in my life that I have not been a victim of domestic violence. And I say fortunate because we know that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience it. So I am delighted. I've been married to a wonderful man for 39 years, and I think I've seen a lot from him about what love and relationships should look like. None of us don't know someone who's been a victim of domestic violence. We know it happens in every race, economic background, educational level. And so I think for me, my passion has always been in all of my career, abuse and hurt is wrong, and people have a right to live a life that's joyful and free of violence and where everyone is respected and valued. So that's really what I've been about all the time I've been doing this work.
And how long has the organization been around?
So we were incorporated in 1977, so we are now in our 44th year of service provision.
That's amazing. Cheers to all of your efforts. Now, you both have different roles, Carrie and Nancy, within the organization. Share a little bit about what distinguishes what you do.
Well, I'll let Carrie take it because Carrie is one of our outstanding leadership volunteers, and without people like Carrie and our board and all the people that support us in the community, our work wouldn't be possible. So,
well, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And so while Nancy is president and CEO of Partnership Against Domestic Violence, that's her full-time gig. She is devoted. It's more than full-time. Mm-hmm. It is what she does every day. So I am a community volunteer. Been involved since about 2014. I started out with participating on the Gwinnett Fund Development Committee. And what we do is raise money specifically for the Gwinnett Crisis Shelter. So a very focused purpose in that group. And that just led to more volunteer opportunities, as Nancy shared so much about what the organization does. That's why I'm still participating, because it's such a full breadth organization, really offering services, expanding the reach of this organization for this much needed organization and services. Mm-hmm. So I'm simply a volunteer, and recently, 2 years ago, Nancy, joined the board of directors. And so I see the organization and have an opportunity to have a different type of influence and impact. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so delighted that you have us here now, because this is exciting to get our message out and to continue to share about this wonderful organization and what we do. So.
And you kind of put the bug in my ear last year, because it's been a while since you've been in the hot seat. And you mentioned this organization and tried and true, we circled back around so that we could talk a little bit more about it.
You were true to your word.
And I'm very excited to have you back in the studio. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys have facilitated to generate some funds and awareness, and then we'll kind of dive into the depth of what you guys do within the community. So you mentioned being out there in the community and involvement for the organization. What does community support mean for your organization? Nancy.
Well, as I said previously, we wouldn't be able to do what we do if it weren't for community support. We are fortunate that we do get grants from government sources, federal, state, local level. That's only about half of what it costs to run our organization. So the funds that people in the community raise for us, that means our shelter doors stay open. That means there's always a voice on the other end of that crisis line when somebody calls. That means when someone goes to the courthouse in terror because her husband's tried to break the door down the past 3 nights, that advocate is there to help her get that temporary protective order and to ensure that her kids are going to be safe when they go to school every day. So it's absolutely critical. The funds that people raise for us. And equally important are all the different volunteers we have. So we, not so much during COVID, but we're getting back. But we have volunteers that prepare meals, that do activities with the children, that paint for us, that do our yard work. So there's so many different ways that people come together to support, to enable our work. And the other thing I want to say about that, people that are survivors of domestic violence, their self-esteem has been taken to the ground. They've been told over and over how worthless they are, how pitiful they are, how no one would ever want them. And so when these folks see people in the community coming and saying, "You're great, you're wonderful, and you can do it," it's so uplifting for them. And it's a very important part of their journey to safety and to hope and to a violence-free life.
I liked the term that you used, Carrie. You said you give a new breath, and it sounds very much a lot like what you were just saying, Nancy. Let me ask you, because you mentioned, just for our listeners who might not be familiar, you're mentioning a brick and mortar. So tell us a little bit about the facility itself and some of the resources available, because you touched on a hotline, you touched on, food services, health, etc. Kind of share with our listeners all those facets.
Absolutely. So we have 2 shelters, and one is in Fulton County and one is in Gwinnett County. And we have a total capacity between the 2 shelters of about 80 people. And that includes parents and their children. And I say parents, 95% of the people that we serve in our shelters as parents are the mothers, but we don't discriminate based upon gender orientation, race, anything like that. So we have served men in our shelters, and we will continue to do that. When someone enters the shelter, basically all of their needs are met. So food, clothing, personal care items, transportation assistance with locating jobs, childcare assistance, case management, counseling, whatever that person may need to start that journey to a violence-free life and self-sufficiency. We provide that. We have child advocates that work with the children because we know children are very traumatized by being in homes with domestic violence. We do follow-up services. As I said, people can move from the shelter into supportive housing, which is their own apartment in the community, where they then are learning how to really live independently while we're continuing to provide that support and financial assistance to help them make that final step into their own housing. And I kind of mentioned the whole comprehensive range of services, so I'll stop because I could talk forever and kind of let you guide us where we need to go next.
I'm just really curious because you mentioned the capacity. So I'm sure that the need is greater than your ability to assist. What is the vetting process like? I don't even know if that's the right word, but how do you choose who's able to come through your doors?
Well, so what we do, the main entrance way to our services is through calling the crisis line. We do have some folks that come to us by seeking legal advocacy and then realizing that they need immediate shelter as well. So our crisis line advocates are going to talk with them about what's going on. They're going to ensure that it's a domestic violence need for shelter and not a general homelessness need, and not that those folks don't really need shelter, but because of limited bed space, we have to reserve it for folks experiencing domestic violence, that it's an imminent need, that there's an issue immediately facing them, that that they're needing shelter, and that they don't have any other options. We're going to help them explore, well, is there a family member? Is there a friend? And if that's the case, then if we have space, we're absolutely going to provide it for them. If we don't have space, we are going to call other shelters until we find a place for them to go. So we're never going to say, oh, sorry, we're full. Good luck. The other thing we've been doing since COVID is putting people in hotels for about a week before they come into the shelter to try to reduce the risk of spreading COVID. And we've gotten some really wonderful funds through COVID CARES grants to support that. And so that's now another option that we're using if the shelters are full, that we can provide that immediate stay in a hotel. And sometimes that week or two provides the space for that person. And we've paid for bus tickets, we've paid for airline tickets to family members in other states. So just looking at what are all the different options and resources we can put together to make it fit for each person that's contacting us.
That's very heartwarming to hear that you help field other resources for people that don't necessarily meet your specific requirements. That's wonderful. And so reassuring to hear that you're not just going to leave someone high and dry, because I can only imagine making that call, the desperation or, the feeling of unease. So I tip my hat to you ladies for taking it a step further. And I'm sure you have great working relationships with other nonprofits or other people that are providing different levels of service for the community.
Absolutely. And I'll mention on the crisis line, so while the shelters are in Fulton and Gwinnett, that is not the limit of the reach of the organization. The crisis line is really statewide. The teen dating violence seminars are statewide. So there is a much broader reach than just these counties. And with the organization having the history that it does, we've kind of heard a term that PADV is a bit of a big sister organization to smaller, more local other county agencies. There's a lot of wonderful domestic violence agencies around, and so we help these smaller organizations as well with the resources and knowledge that we have. And every person who calls the crisis line, a discussion is had on a safety plan. So it's really designed for that particular caller. That safety plan may be just something as simple as going to a neighbor's house, just to some degree, or it may be as extreme as getting to the shelter that night. So it's very customized for what the caller is needing.
Do you work hand in hand with the police or anybody? Because I imagine in a domestic violence situation, hopefully the law enforcement is involved in the offenders being, taken away, or it's being righted, shall I say, they're wrong. So do you have any affiliation with the police in the process, and what does that kind of look like?
So we definitely work with law enforcement, and we work to do training with law enforcement to help them understand. I always say domestic violence makes absolutely no sense until you understand the dynamics of it. It makes no sense to be hurt in your home, which should be the safest place where you are. It makes no sense to stay with someone who's hurting you until you understand why that happens, and it makes no sense to hurt someone that you love, because I believe many abusers do actually love the person that you're hurting. So when you're a law enforcement officer, and now this is the 5th time I've come out to this house, and I've seen this person screaming and crying and saying, yes, I absolutely want to press charges, and then 2 months later I'm back and the same thing's going on. It can be hard to stay patient, and it can be hard to understand that. So we really work with law enforcement to help them understand the dynamics and perhaps why they're seeing what they're seeing. The reality is, for many survivors, calling the police may not feel safe. If you're someone who's undocumented, and often abusers use kind of what they think is the weakest point or the easiest way to get that person, right? So if you're undocumented, we'll go ahead and call the police. They're going to deport you, and I'm going to get the children, and you'll never see your kids again. We've seen with people of color a concern about, if I call the police, is it going to escalate it? I want this person out of my home. I don't want him harmed. So is it safe to be able to do that? We've heard abusers, if and the person frankly may or may not have a mental health problem, but police come out, oh, she's not on her meds and she just acts crazy all the time, so just ignore. So I think police intervention absolutely can mean safety, and we tell folks, if they call us and if they're in immediate danger, call 911. We are not first responders. We can't ensure that immediate safety, and we still have work to do all the way around to increase the effectiveness of that, and also survivors' comfort in feeling like that is going to be a really good resource for them.
Speaking of volunteers and associates, who is on the other side of that call? Are the people that are fielding these calls through your hotline, are they volunteers or are they hired professionals? All voluntary?
So, they're staff. The vast majority of the time, they're staff. Again, it's a 24-hour day, 365 a year
call center, basically.
Right, and we never. There's always a voice on the other end of that phone. In fact, with COVID, we've put in place a system where staff can now answer crisis calls through their computer. So there's even more capability of having more staff people able to do it both on site and remotely. We do, however, have volunteers that assist with that as well. So we'll do training with them, and they will sit with staff. It's being on the crisis line. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know what that person's needs are going to be. So you have a good sense of both what people are bringing to you and all the different resources those issues may need to address them.
I can only imagine the demeanor of the people that are taking the calls. You have to use extreme sensitivity, empathy, listen, be nurturing and comforting all in one. So like you said, I can only imagine some of the things that they hear.
Yeah, and I have to do a quick shout out to our staff. It is not easy work. As I said, you never know what people are going to bring you. And not only on the crisis line, but when people get into the shelter, they are stressed out. They are anxious. They are afraid. They're dealing with their kids screaming all the time. They're dealing with all these different personalities that they're living with in the shelter. And, residents lose it sometimes, and they yell at staff, and they have conflict with each other, and talk about having to stay calm and to mediate and to manage. We are doing everything, our staff's doing everything they can to try to address that situation so the person can get in a better place and move forward with successfully, again, creating that violence-free life. So they're absolutely amazing. I just have to give them a shout out.
They are
Shout
amazing.
out to the staff and all the volunteers as well. I wanted to say how wonderful it is that you address the teen violence too. You've said that many times, and not many people think that high schoolers in a relationship or even younger, college, oh, that's not a serious relationship. There's none of that, but it does exist. And those youngsters might not feel empowered to break free from that situation. So it's wonderful that you cater to all aspects.
Yeah, in fact, we did the Gwinnett Fund Development Committee hosted the Women in Action Breakfast Forum, the event that we talked about the first time. And our topic that year was teen dating violence. And there was a very interesting statistic, and Nancy, help me if I don't remember it right. I believe it is 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 teens will experience teen dating violence. But 83% of parents had a perspective that it would never happen to their child. That teen dating violence wasn't even a possibility, and yet so many occurring. Children, or young teens, college-age kids are going to experience it. So that huge disconnect between what parents are thinking is going on in the dating world and what's really happening.
And one could, you could venture to say that if they, get help at that age and they kind of nip it in the bud. Because imagine if you have a 16-year-old girl that's in an abusive relationship and she tolerates it. Carrying forward to the rest of her life in other relationships, she might be subject to that same treatment because she never knew anything other. So if you remedy it at the early age, there will be hope moving forward for those relationships.
Absolutely.
Healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a study done. Georgia has a fatality review committee where they look at deaths that are a result of domestic violence and try to find out what are common factors and what can we address. And what they found out is that people that are killed by their abuser are most likely to meet their abuser between the ages of 16 and 23. Wow. So it becomes very, very clear that early intervention is absolutely critical for the safety and well-being of people going forward.
Yeah, and the Teen Dating Summit is the annual event that is, I mentioned that Georgia-wide teens come from all over, teens and parents. It's no charge to the teens, no charge to the parents. And it's over 10,000 a year participating. Or was it 15,000 this last year because of...
Well, it's not. We haven't gotten quite that big. We haven't gotten quite that big. We generally have about 500 people at it, which is still, it's still a lot of people, and it's like you said, it's about half adults and half youth, and it's a great opportunity to get that conversation going, and everyone's really excited, and the energy is great. And again, it sounds kind of strange to say, but people have a great time when they're there and learn a lot.
And there's teen ambassadors who are participating in the program, the development of the program. So just imagine those teenagers going back to their high schools or colleges, having had that experience with a whole different perspective and what they can share and how they can really turn things around for everyone they meet in terms of dating violence.
We're speaking with Carrie Herron and Nancy Freehoff of Partnerships Against Domestic Violence. And if anybody cares to learn more about that organization, you can visit them online at www.padv.org. And ladies, before we dive into the tournament upcoming, which I'm very excited to talk about, I just have a word from one of our community partners. Burn Boot Camp in Suwanee. Kickstart your transformation and enjoy a 45-minute dynamic workout that includes a combination of strength and high-intensity interval training. They have one-on-one focus meetings with trainers, personalized nutrition and guidance, and they have complimentary child watch. Stop in and say hello to the operators, Roy and Erica Bean, and tell them Business RadioX sent you. All right, ladies. Now, June 11th, which is just right around the corner. Holy smokes, this year has flown by. We went from like a detrimental 2020, and now we're already Q2.
Can you believe
Zoom.
Yeah.
Our listeners can't see this visually attractive flyer that I'm holding in my hand, but it's got purple and green, and it just looks like so much fun. I guess those are y'all's colors.
Yep.
For the PADV. Very nice. And it's going to be held at Bears Best. Carrie, why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Because I know you've been working hard on it for quite a while.
I am thrilled to tell you, and really hats off to the women in our committee who are leading this charge and getting this tournament organized. I'm kind of support role in this, but we are so excited. This is our inaugural event, Tee Up to End Domestic Violence.
I love the name.
You already said Friday, June 11th at Bears Best. And we need tournament golfers. You're going to have a great time playing this course. It's a beautiful course. Bears Best is just wonderful. And if you come on out, register at 9 in the morning, get on the course at 10. We'll have a shotgun start at 10. And we have a beginner's clinic. So if you are not a tournament golfer, again, come on out. We've got a beginner's clinic. We're going to start that after our tournament golfers head out for their day of 18 holes. And we'll start registration at 10:30 and start our clinic at 11. We've got a PGA golfer who will be leading us in that. We'll do a little bit on our short game, on the putting green. We'll do a little bit on driving the ball and just learning the basics and just really have a great time. And then, because we anticipate that these beginners might be more women than men, but it's open to everyone, of course, we will have a wonderful luncheon for the clinic golfers. And we'll get a short presentation from the child advocate at Partnership Against Domestic Violence. So we'll give a little education and exposure to that facet of the services. And I've listened to the child advocate share some of the things that she does, and it's just wonderful to hear, and it's important to hear, as hard as it is to hear the things that kids who are in this circumstance face. So we'll do that and just really enjoy our time together that day. But it's going to be great. So
if people are interested, in golfing, how can they?
Yes, so do register. Don't just show up. Come on and get online. You can register by going to www.padv.org. Go to events, click on events. You'll scroll down and see golf tournament and clinic, and click on that, and it'll lead you the way to get registered at that point.
Are you guys having sponsors as well? like
do.
co-sponsors and stuff. Very nice. And are you still seeking sponsors for the tournament? If so, how can
We
people-
are still seeking sponsors. We have some sponsorship opportunities, and of course, with some of those levels of sponsorship comes some tournament golf play as well, and clinic participation. So yes, we would welcome sponsors. We've got a great group of supporting sponsors that are going to be highlighted at the event.
Are you able to share a couple?
Northside Hospital.
Wonderful.
So yes, Northside's been behind our organization for a long time, and as a premier sponsor, we can't say enough about Northside. And their commitment to ending domestic violence is, it's just in everything they do. So we're glad from their support to this organization to when you're in the hospital, you can see a lot of materials throughout the hospital to reach out to people who may need help. CAB Incorporated,
of course,
yes. Epic Insurance Brokers, Buffington Burns Electric, to name a few.
And a little birdie told me that maybe Business RadioX will be broadcasting live from the tournament.
I think that will
We'll
happen.
see.
That little birdie
You guys
told us
will
the same thing.
have to come out.
So
They'll
we're
have to come
very
out.
excited
You'll
to
meet-
have you there.
We're excited to come, and we'll definitely get a word from some of your sponsors.
Fantastic.
Good.
If somebody wanted to contribute outside of participating in the tournament, obviously contributions are welcome. Would they do that also through the website? Is there a donation or
There
a
is.
contribution tab as well?
Right, exactly. Right next to the register button, if you follow that pathway that I just shared, right next to it is a donate button. So just a donation can come along as well.
And out of curiosity, just because you mentioned, like housing, and I know how many essential things, especially women, need just basic things. Do you guys accept maybe toiletries or anything? Can people give in kind outside of dollars? And if so, what do you need?
Absolutely. We have, again, wonderful supporters that donate all the different items that we need within our program. We currently are not accepting any used items, again, because of COVID. And you can go, again, to our website and find a list of current needs. But generally the things, you think about running a household and running it for 50 people, right? So we need paper towels, we need toilet paper.
Shampoo.
Exactly. We have lots of babies, so we need diapers in every sizes, cleaning supplies, obviously disinfectant supplies, and we do have a list of that on our website as well. The other thing that we do is we're registered at Amazon. We're registered at the wedding, the
list?
marriage
Yeah.
registry. So you can just go and do a search for Partnership Against Domestic Violence, and then the things that we need
add them to your cart.
within our program. Right, you can just add them to your cart and ship them directly to us. So that's a real convenient way for people to donate to us.
Very exciting. Well, ladies, as we round the end of this specialty program, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners about the organization that we didn't touch on? And if not, then how can someone reach someone at your place? I know we talked about a coordinator, maybe that you were going to give the information. Please share that with them.
Yeah, I would say we haven't touched on we've touched a little bit on it, but I want to talk a little more about volunteer opportunities. So there is a volunteer coordinator. Is she at both shelters, or is there one at each shelter?
No, she covers for the whole organization.
Okay. And Katie Turner is her name.
Mm-hmm. And the best way, really, just to make it easy for everybody, is you can just email us at info@padv.org. And so if you want a speaker, that's another thing we haven't talked a lot about, but we do a lot of community education, and we can speak in general about DV. We do work with employers about DV in the workplace. Again, with our dating violence program, we do a lot of community ed. Anything, just go to info@padv.org, and we will get it to the appropriate person to respond and get you whatever it is that you're looking for. And again, our website is just a wealth of information. So again, as we talked about donating, volunteer opportunities, you can find all of that on our website.
Yeah.
Carrie, what specific volunteer opportunities are available? I feel like you had something maybe that you wanted to mention specifically.
Yeah. So kind of a little bit of my story was getting in, coming onto this fundraising committee, and I had no experience fundraising. This was so foreign to me and uncomfortable, quite frankly.
But you deal with money all day.
I know, but I don't ask people for it. And so I've learned a lot, but what's beautiful about this committee that I'm on, and really any opportunity that you want to engage in with this organization, is not only do we do fundraising, in fact, that's probably 25% of what we do. The other 75% of the time, we're putting together events for shelter residents. So we do an event, a Santa's breakfast in December.
Yeah.
We bring a Christmas tree, a live tree to the shelter and make sure, right, exactly. Meals, Nancy mentioned that. We did an Easter egg hunt. We do a back to school event at the shelter. What else?
Halloween party.
Trunk or treat.
Yeah.
So we get to be with the folks, the residents at the shelter, and the appreciation that they have. And you kind of get more than you give when you go to participate in an event like that, because you're just helping these kids smile for a while. We might provide time for moms to sit around and talk because we're doing crafts with their children, and just giving them a moment to just rest, just abide and be waited on and catered to for a little bit. And that's part of the healing journey that we participate in. So it's so much more than just fundraising. And maybe that's the more important part about what we do. Yeah. And a final encouragement, I learned about the organization through, one of the places I learned about it was through the Leadership Development Program, Glance Gwinnett. And so if you're looking to plug in, you might think, I don't have any skills, I can't. We don't need that. We need hearts and hearts and hands. And you really don't have to be brilliant at any one thing. It's just many hands makes the work light. And we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. And Carrie, I wanted to mention when you were talking about giving moms a little space and a little opportunity to breathe. I was in a support group, and a mom said in the group, since I've been here, I've had time to hug my children again. And so you just get that sense of the intensity and the trauma of being in that situation, and how it just takes everything. And then how when you come into the shelter and you've got folks coming in and saying, here, sit down, let me bring you breakfast. And you've got that sense again of light and joy, right? You can breathe and you can hug your children.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yep.
Well, I do want to end on a nice and positive note. We chatted before the show. I would love for you to share with our listeners an example of a success story, someone that came in and maybe is now flourishing independently. Anyone that you can share would be great.
Okay, absolutely. Well, and as we always make up names because confidentiality is very important to us. But I'll tell you about a woman, Rose, who came into our shelter, had suffered all abuse is serious, but was a long-time survivor of domestic violence. She came in with 4 children, felt completely lost, completely overwhelmed. But when she came into the shelter, she told her advocate, I'm going to make this happen for me. I'm going to make it work. She found employment within 2 weeks of coming into the shelter. We were able to help her with childcare costs. Because she was in the shelter, she was able to save some money, and we were then able to transition her into our supportive housing program. She kept herself employed, but knew that she wanted to move even further, so she started her own business. She started her own cleaning business, and she is now very successful with that, and actually has 2 people working with her in her cleaning business. And since coming into supportive housing, she's now moved out into her own independent housing. So just step by step, she's taken everything that's available and grabbed it and run with it. And it's just been absolutely tremendous to see.
Well, congratulations. I know that's what gets you up every day.
That's why we're here.
That's what it's about.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your passion and your message about the organization. And again, for our listeners who would like to contribute or simply learn more, please visit www.padv.org. And ladies, I look forward to the 11th. I've ordered some good weather for us.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
We look forward to being out there at Bears Best with you. For all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. If you'd like to listen to these shows, they are available online 24/7 at businessradiox.com. Select the Gwinnett Studio. Subscribe through your favorite podcast application and stay connected with us on social media at Gwinnett RadioX. Until next time, I am Amanda Pierce, and this has been Community Spotlight on Business RadioX.